Margaret Hayes had been a caregiver for 32 years. At 58, she'd seen countless families navigate the difficult journey of aging, and she'd learned that the smallest acts of kindness often meant the most. When she arrived at the Preston family home that crisp October morning, she found Henry Preston sitting in his wheelchair by the window, gazing out at the autumn leaves. The 79-year-old man had suffered a stroke 6 months earlier, and though his body had weakened, his eyes still held a gentle spark. "Good morning, Mr. Preston," Margaret said warmly, setting down her bag. "Isn't it a beautiful day?" Henry turned slowly and offered her a crooked smile. His speech had been affected by the stroke, making conversation difficult. But Margaret had learned to read his expressions, the small gestures that conveyed what words could not. She helped him with his morning routine, moving at an unhurried pace. There was no need to rush. Margaret had always believed that dignity and patience were the greatest gifts she could offer. As she settled Henry back into his chair, she noticed him looking at an old photograph on the side table. It showed a younger Henry with his late wife, Eleanor, dancing at what looked like a summer wedding. "You miss her, don't you?" Margaret said softly. Henry's eyes filled with tears. He nodded just once. Margaret had lost her own husband, Robert, 5 years earlier. She understood that particular ache, the way grief could sweep over you at unexpected moments. Without thinking, she began to hum. It was an old song from the 1960s, one her mother used to sing. The melody seemed to ease something in Henry's expression. His shoulders relaxed slightly. Encouraged, Margaret began to sing the words quietly, her voice gentle and unhurried. She wasn't a professional singer, but there was warmth in her tone, a genuine tenderness. She sang about love that endures through the seasons, about memories that never fade. As she sang, she took Henry's weathered hand in hers and gave it a gentle squeeze. What Margaret didn't know was that Henry's son, David, had just arrived home. The 43-year-old businessman had driven up from the city for an unexpected visit. Standing in the doorway, still in his suit, he stopped when he heard the singing. David Preston had built a successful investment firm through sharp decisions and long hours. His life was meetings, spreadsheets, and conference calls. He'd hired the best care for his father, the best medical equipment, the finest therapists, the most qualified nurses, but standing there, watching this woman sing to his father, holding his hand with such genuine affection, David felt something shift inside him. He'd been so focused on providing the best professional care that he'd forgotten about simple human connection. He watched his father's face, saw a peace there he hadn't seen in months. Margaret finished her song and smiled at Henry. "Would you like some tea, Mr. Preston? I'll make it just the way you like it." "That was beautiful," David said quietly from the doorway. Margaret turned, startled. "Oh, Mr. Preston! I didn't hear you come in. I hope I wasn't disturbing—" "No," David said, stepping into the room. "Please don't apologize. I haven't seen my father look that peaceful in a long time." Over the next hour, David watched Margaret work. She talked to Henry about the changing leaves, about a cardinal she'd seen that morning, about memories from her own life. She treated him not as a patient, but as a person worthy of conversation and companionship. During lunch, she patiently helped Henry eat, encouraging him without rushing, celebrating each small success. And when he grew tired, she sang again, softly, until his eyes grew heavy. After Henry fell asleep, David asked Margaret to join him in the kitchen. "How long have you been caring for my father?" he asked. 3 months now," Margaret replied. "He's a wonderful man, your father. You can see the kindness in him," David nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about expanding my father's care team. I want to make sure he has everything he needs. But watching you today, I realized something. All the medical equipment in the world doesn't replace what you just gave him. Genuine care and human dignity." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'd like to offer you a full-time position with a significant increase in pay. But more than that, I'd like you to help me develop a care program for other families. So many people are where I was, thinking that professional care alone is enough. But it's the Margaret Hayes of the world who make the real difference." Margaret was quiet for a moment. She thought about all the families she'd worked with over the years, all the elders who'd simply needed someone to see them as whole people, not just patients. "I'd be honored," she said finally, "but I have one condition. Whatever we create, it has to be about the person, not the illness. It has to be about preserving dignity and finding joy, even in difficult seasons." "Agreed," David said, extending his hand. Over the following months, Margaret worked with David to create a training program for caregivers. They called it the Eleanor Initiative, named after Henry's late wife. The program emphasized compassion, patience, and the small acts of kindness that transform care into genuine human connection. Margaret trained dozens of caregivers, sharing not just techniques but philosophy. She taught them about the power of song, of listening, of simply being present. She showed them that an elderly person's hand deserved to be held gently, that their stories deserved to be heard, that their dignity deserved to be protected. David found himself transformed as well. He began spending more time with his father, learning to slow down, to appreciate quiet moments. He realized that success wasn't just measured in profit margins, but in the quality of relationships, the depth of compassion. Henry lived another 2 years, peaceful years filled with music and kindness. When he passed away in his sleep, Margaret was there, holding his hand, singing softly. At the memorial service, David spoke about his father's final years. "My father taught me that wealth isn't just financial. The richest legacy we can leave is how we treat others, especially in their most vulnerable moments. Margaret showed me that lesson through her daily acts of grace." Margaret continued her work well into her 70s. The Eleanor Initiative expanded across 3 states, training hundreds of caregivers. But she never forgot that October morning when she'd simply sung to a lonely man, unaware that anyone was watching. Because that's the thing about kindness. Its greatest power lies in its authenticity. When we care for others without expectation of reward, when we offer dignity and compassion simply because it's right, we create ripples that extend far beyond what we can see, and sometimes, when we least expect it, those ripples come back to us, transforming not just one life but many.